Just in case.
I'm pretty sure I would take my dead dog.
Well, every year we wait for his demise, but it doesn't happen.
I had a guinea
Made
pig
a
like
pact
that.
with the devil.
I want him to live forever.
We'll only die when one of us dies or something.
He may kill us in our sleep.
Okay, I have to mute. There we go. Yeah, it's weird. Okay. Weird. Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. All right, I'm going to start the webinar. And then we'll watch.
Their favorite sip.
Can we talk?
You can talk. People
Can we
can hear.
send private notes to each other, like trash
Yes.
talking each other during our?
Yes, you can go in the chat and you can pick who you want to.
Because I noticed that Celine was yawning, and it was like, wow, we haven't even started yet.
Wait, no. I've had meetings since 9:30 in the morning. I can yawn once.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
You can yawn all you want.
You can also send a message to all the panelists and the attendees.
Ooh.
Well, I'm certainly going to be trash talking my wife during this process. So
Mhm.
Just
So this is the first time that I've realized that two people in this group are actually in a relationship. Isn't that like a conflict of interest?
Well,
Some
I'll,
kind?
We
Come on,
want
guys.
it by the end of this. We want
it's
by the
only
end-
a conflict if she wins and I don't.
No, that conflict
See, which is
if I
the main
don't.
reason why you should vote for my book instead.
Okay, listen, I have a historical beef against Fern because I did this last year
Yes,
for the library.
yes.
There was a tie between my book and one of the other books, and Vern had given his vote away.
Boy, did I pay for that.
mhm.
I can't believe that she's actually letting you share the screen with her.
Yeah, well,
Really?
we don't share a bed anymore. That just says it all, doesn't it?
I was in the proverbial
Now we know where
doghouse with
Scrappy
Scrappy
sleeps.
for a while.
Right, Scrappy was in the bed. Vern was in the dog bed.
All right, we will vote for a winner tonight.
Well, just everybody remember and give me the pity vote. One vote. My husband gives his away.
Scott, I do have to ask you where you got that awesome CBC shirts.
Well, you'll have to thank my father for that. He worked at CBC back in 1975.
Wow.
The fun CBC story from that period of my life is that for the Christmas party for the staff, that one year they had a horse-drawn carriage, lovely wagon, you know, the beautiful scene, lots of snow on the ground. Some kid pushed me off and I got ran over.
Oh no.
Were you hurt?
Well, I'm still here.
It's 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Putting that down.
7 o'clock.
So wait a second. So this is pass me down the shirt or?
Yeah.
It looks original 70s.
I acquired this in my teens and I wear it at least once a year. It's vintage and authentic and worth a lot of money.
And you still fit it after being in your teens. That's very impressive.
That is extremely
Well,
impressive.
I'm a meticulous dresser. Very good care of my clothes.
All right. I am going to shush everybody.
Okay.
And we are going to begin. I think we will have people continue to join us, but we're going to get started because we have so much to get through tonight. So, welcome panelists, welcome attendees to Canada Reads at the Library. And I just want to say it's such an amazing privilege to be able to share stories and hear different voices as we're on Treaty 6 territory, which is the traditional lands of First Nations and Métis people. So thank you everyone for joining us here for tonight. I'm just going to give an overview of the evening, and we also have my colleague Jeff is hanging out in the background. So if anyone has any questions or technical issues, just put a little note to Jeff in the chat and he will take care of you. So we will be meeting all of these panelists. They each have a book to defend. We're going to give them time to talk about their books, read from their books, and then I've got some questions for them. So we're going to have a little Q&A session, and you will also be able to, if you have specific questions, you can put them in the chat, and we're going to have a little bit of time for that. And as someone asked, we will be voting by the end of this program for which book is the winner. And we're also very lucky to have a set of the Canada Reads books donated to us by CBC Books. They sent us a box. So at the end of tonight, we are going to randomly select an attendee to get a copy of the winning book. And then we're going to do a draw for the other 4 books in a few days. But to enter that, you have to fill in the feedback form and let us know what you thought of Canada Reads. You're going to get a link to that after the program. So fill that in, and then you will be in the draw for one of the other 4 books. So that was really cool of CBC to send that to us. Okay. I am Michelle. I'm the adult programming librarian at the St. Albert Public Library. This is my favorite program at the library. We started in 2016. It's been fantastic. Last year, we had to cancel, I believe, the day before we were supposed to do Canada Reads because of COVID. So we have 3 brave panelists who are back from last year. I kind of offered it to everybody. So that is Susie and Selena and Scott. And then we have 2 new panelists, Celine and Vern, joining us. So let us begin. I'm going to introduce everybody. So we're going to start with Susie. Susie Maloney has been a novelist, journalist, essayist, and screenwriter for decades. Her second novel, A Dry Spell, has been published in 18 countries and translated into 12 languages. And this, really? Tom Cruise optioned the film rights? Sweet. Her other novels, Bastion Falls, The Dwelling, and The 13, have sold in multiple countries and languages. She was also the 2020 Edmonton Public Library Writer in Residence. And last year, she graciously let me steal her for Canada Reads. I always like to invite the Edmonton Writer in Residence to be a panelist. So Susie was it. What I'm most excited about as a fan of the horror genre is that Susie's first feature film, Bright Hill Road, which is a roadside motel supernatural thriller, it's now available through various streaming platforms, and my children are not home this weekend. So I know what I'm going to be doing this weekend. I was like, wait. I didn't realize it was out already. So I'm like, yay. All right. So Susie Maloney. Hello. Next is Scott Hayes. Scott Hayes gave me the bad news that he was going to be a panelist last year. I fearfully asked him if he wanted to try again, and much to my chagrin, he said yes, again. I kid. Actually, I'm so happy that we finally got Scott to be part of one of our library programs. He's been a cheerleader for the library through the articles he writes for the St. Albert Gazette. And not only is he a reporter, but he is also, apparently this part is a secret, a writer of fiction and poetry in his spare time. One of his prized possessions is Todd Babiak's debut novel, Chokehold, which the author inscribed to me, "You taught me everything I know about writing." True story. Scott cares deeply about both telling stories that matter and the weight and magic that words hold. Hello, Scott. Don't disappoint me. I'm just kidding. All right, then we have Celine Caruso Dixon, who is joining us. And actually, we've nabbed her already for library programs. She was a host for our Black Film Watch parties with Jeff Manderscheid. So then I stole her next. So that's awesome. She's a third-year political science student at the U of A. Her passion for social justice and human rights have led her to be part of many groups on and off campus who are focused on bettering opportunities for minority communities, most notably becoming president of the Black Students Association at U of A. I was president of the German club, but there were only 6 of us, so it's not as impressive. And she also helped create an open mic space called Zion that works with minority communities and those in juvenile detention centers. So that's fantastic. Her work with La Conexión has enabled her to be more involved in her own community, the Afro-Latin community, and to help provide meaningful experiences and events to those of African, Caribbean, and Latin descent. So welcome, Celine. You're very brave. All right. So from Celine, we move to Selena. Selena Lawyer was born into a culturally rich Cree Métis family, a strong, vibrant background that impacts all that she does. She's married with 5 amazing adult children, which I think is an outstanding achievement because I'm not sure that I'm going to get my 2 children all the way to adulthood. So I can't even imagine 5. Maybe after a couple, it's just like adding them on the end and it's not as hard. I don't know. She brings a wealth of community involvement, traditional skills, practical knowledge, and experience, as well as a BA in linguistics with honors. She does traditional Métis beadwork, which is gorgeous, gorgeous, and a number of other textile and fiber arts as well, including traditional Métis finger woven sashes and sewing. And we actually were able to have some of Selena's beadwork as part of Art Walk at the library. She's currently an Aboriginal programmer at the Musée Heritage Museum. And last but not least, Vern Thiessen is this year's Edmonton Public Library Writer in Residence. So, you know, I had offered for Susie to come back, but then I'm like, okay, but now we have a new writer in residence, so I have to steal him too. This is Vern's short bio. Short. Ready? He is one of Canada's most produced playwrights. His work has been seen across Canada, the US, Europe, and Asia. His works include Of Human Bondage, Vimy, Einstein's Gift, which was a Governor General winner, Lennon's Embalmers, which was a GG finalist, Apple, and Shakespeare's Will. He's been produced off-Broadway 5 times. Vern is the recipient of numerous awards, including the Dora and Sterling Awards for Outstanding New Play, the Carol Bolt Award, the Gwen Ferris General's Literary Award for, Gwen Ferris Ringwood Award. This is too long. The City of Edmonton Arts Achievement Award, the U of A Alumni Award of Excellence, and the Governor General's Literary Award for Drama. So this is pretty good stuff here. So Vern received his BA from the University of Winnipeg and an MFA from the U of A. And I'll also let the cat out of the bag right now and tell you that Vern and Susie are married. So this should make the evening's debate even more interesting. So let us begin.
That's his greatest achievement.
Let us begin. So we are going to start. I'm going to mute myself and we're going to start with Susie, who is going to introduce us to The Midnight Bargain by C.L. Polk. I leave it to you, Susie.
Hello, everyone. I am not so much defending as telling you all about the winning book tonight, which is The Midnight Bargain by C.L. Polk. C.L. Polk, the best part here is, there she is, look at her, beautiful lady. She is from Calgary, so Alberta is representing. Keep that in mind. So I would call this a fantasy romance, an extremely beautiful, fast read, wonderful, takes you away, which of course is part of the theme of this year's Canada Reads is one book to transport us. This is that book because it literally does transport you to another world. So here's what the book is about. Beatrice Claiborne does not want to get married. She instead would like to be a mage, a sorcerer, a very powerful sorcerer. Beatrice's problem is that women are only allowed to practice magic, and even then at only a low level until they're married. And once they're married, they are something called collared. They're collared, literally. So there's a collar put on them, and they can no longer practice magic. So Beatrice does not want that to happen. She wants to be as powerful as the men in the community are allowed to be, and she's very, very good at magic. The problem is that it is now the bargaining season. What a great word for it. The bargaining season, and Beatrice is on the block, so to speak. Bargaining season is much like the Regency era debut, and I'll get to that in a moment. So that means that all the young women of marriageable age go to a place that in this case is not London, but is London. And they are paraded through balls and brunches and parties and home parties and garden parties. And they trade cards with young men, and there's all these little rules for these courtships. And the biggest rule is by the end of it that you've nabbed yourself a husband, or that you've nabbed yourself a really great bargain like Beatrice would be. So she has to take part in these activities because she hasn't been able to bring herself to tell her father that she can't do this. But she does, for a moment, trust her sister. She's got a younger sister who's very excited about bargaining season and will do really great in her own debut in a few years. But in the meantime, she just spends all of her time giving Beatrice tips on catching a man. Child's 13. She's giving Beatrice, the 16-year-old, tips on catching a man. It's actually embarrassing. But Beatrice needs those tips because she's not very into the whole thing. She would really rather just practice magic. But one of the good things about being in not London for bargaining season is all of the vast array of bookstores that are there, because Beatrice has come to learn that if she collects a certain grimoire, which is, I don't know how to say it, I'm sorry, grimoire. It's a book of magic. If she collects a certain one, then she can, before being married, collect enough higher power to prove her worth as a magician. I'm not giving anything away. That's all in the first chapter. What happens to this one single book that she wants to that she wants to get is she gets somebody cuts in line, a beautiful young woman who happens to have an even more beautiful brother, cuts in line, gets the grimoire, and now Beatrice feels that she has to track it down. So to track it down, oh, okay, sorry. That's not something I'm going to tell you because that's part of the plot. Sorry. So anyway, so after the grimoire's gone missing, and there's the opening night party, so to speak, what Beatrice does is she gets a demon inside herself, a spirit that should be able to sniff out the grimoire. And so they go together to this park, and that's the beginning of the real magic of this book. And in fact, the magic of this book is the incredible world that C.L. Polk has created. It very much rivals the bigoted J.K. Rowling's world that she creates in the Harry Potter series. It's got, its own language, it's got its own traditions and rules, and they are just amazing enough that she creates a world that is not London, the story taking place in a time that is not the Regency time. And this isn't a girl's debut like it would have been at the time. So I'm going to give you an example of, this is what Beatrice has to look forward to should she marry. Remember, this is a young woman who's very, very good at magic. She's very, very good at all sorts of things that she really shouldn't be good at or isn't really allowed to be good at. For instance, she's a very good accountant, which I thought was an interesting choice, but she's a very good accountant. So here would be her life post-marriage. She had these few moments to herself before she was expected at breakfast, and then she would be pinned and laced into a gown that displayed her like a jewel and sent an artful message that she, expecting a quiet afternoon at home, had dressed herself simply, but the cut of the gown from neckline to hem was meant to flatter her youth. She was meant to be interrupted at a creative pursuit designed to reveal her education and skill. She was expected to display a sense of beauty and the skill to produce it. She played violon, though few women performed for public entertainments. She could draw in color pastel and paint and oil, though few women's works were hung in display in the galleries of Chasland. She was proficient in knitting, hooked lace, and simple embroidery, all skills that would be displayed on her children's clothing. Beatrice's head pounded, and she flipped the washcloth over, trying to sink into its soothing, cooling embrace. So that doesn't sound very exciting. It doesn't sound like it's using any of her skills, but maybe we should discuss now what the prize could possibly be. So one of the first takers of her card is the young man who is the brother of Yisbeta. She is the beautiful young woman who snatched the grimoire. And he is a work of art. Let's hear that. Ianthe Levan is heir to the shipping fortune so vast we can't conceive of it. He wears the rose sword of the first mystery of the chapter house. He's an expert horseman, a superb dancer, an able sword fighter, the figure of fashion. He's miles above a banker's family. Harriet's eyebrows pushed worried lines across her forehead. She held Beatrice's arm, shaking it as if it would make her words carry more weight. His family has more connections than a spider web. Their wishes become laws. He claims dukes and princes for friends. He speaks 4 languages. Mother, she'll never land him if she doesn't do this properly. Don't you see? Leave Beatrice be, Mother said. I'm sure she will do very well, even without the wisdom of your bargaining season knowledge. She is so strong in the power, gentlemen will want her even without playing hunt and chase with multiple suitors. It's the best way, Harriet insisted. Multiple suitors increased Beatrice's appeal, but now she'll look like she set her sights too high, and everyone loves a comeuppance. So there you go. So this young man who, they don't mention it, but he's strikingly beautiful. And when Beatrice arrives at the first ball, he is the first man she sees. And the spirit that is inside her has been promised 3 things in order to seek out the grimoire for Beatrice. The 3 things are a drink of gin, a piece of cake, and a kiss from a young man. And so Beatrice is at this party, and she's going to have to do the 3 things that she's not allowed to do. But she's very, very used to doing things she's not allowed to do anyway. There you go. The
Awesome.
Midnight Bargain.
Thank you, Susie. We are going to move on to Scott.
Hi, am I live? Here I am with Francesca's Equiazzi's butter honey pig bread, and I have to continue to remind myself of the order of these things. This was not my first choice of a novel, but I'm so glad that I got the book in my hand, because I do believe that every white person should read a black book, and every man should read a book with women as the main characters. And so here it is. If you haven't got it yet, it's your chance. This is an incredible read from a first-time novelist. It's a very rich, wonderfully told story about 3 Nigerian women. And you'll have to forgive me if my pronunciations are a little off. I did practice. The 2 twin sisters are Taya and how do I say it? Kahindi. Their mother is, where are my notes? Their mother is, I forget her name, I'm sorry. She is what is called an Ogbanji Spirit. So in Nigerian lore, apparently this is a kind of trickster character who comes into parents' lives as just as a fleeting a character as any. It doesn't have any firm grasp of the meaning of life. It comes and it goes. So this woman was born to her parents and reborn. She was stillborn. The parents suffered with trying to have a child so often, and eventually she stayed just because she decided, you know, it's going to happen eventually. So she stuck around, and this woman grows up and has these two twin daughters, and the twins have complicated lives. They're not exactly, you know, perfect twins, certainly not physically, but especially not in terms of their experiences. And so what happens over the course of the story is the family is separated. The mother stays in Nigeria, but the two daughters find themselves in Europe and in Canada for various reasons. But the ties between them are at times close, but at times tenuous. So what happens is, it's a wonderfully told story because there's the great idea of one of the sisters writing so many letters to the other to try and get her to respond. You know, there's that biological connection that so many of us feel with our siblings, but the other is perhaps reluctant. The relationship fades because of, you know, a traumatic event, which I won't discuss, but it does work not necessarily immediately in their lives, but over time there's a gradual pulling apart because the one sister doesn't know how to deal with it. The other doesn't necessarily know about it, but feels something. And so there's always this tension about why don't you take my calls? How come you don't respond to my letters? I miss you, I love you, but eventually those phone calls and those letters dwindle. In fact, the one sister doesn't even send some letters only until what is perhaps a decade later. She gets a shoebox and sends the entire shoebox. So the book is told with the framework of a lot of these letters being read by the other sister periodically as a way of catching up, and it ties into what's happening to the family now. And the title of the book does allude to the fact that there's a lot of food in this book. I probably gained about 10 pounds just reading it, because you can't read it without having the munchies. So I probably ate 3 cakes just by myself in the descriptions of this wonderful book. And it doesn't help that one of the characters, you know, goes to, you know, culinary school, and there's a lot of descriptions that are really great in that way. So it was actually a real challenge for me to get into the book, not just because of the names. The mother is coming to me, Kambiranachi, and her daughters Kahindi and Taye. I didn't totally understand the framework of the book just at the beginning, but, you know, after 50 or so pages, these characters live like they're right next to you, and part of it is very spiritual. I'll talk about that in a bit, but I wanted to read one passage from about 65 pages in, and it doesn't actually give chapter numbers. Each chapter has its reference point as one of the main characters, one of the 3 members of the family. So you're constantly switching perspectives, which is really creative, and I really appreciated that. So this one is from Kahindi, and she says, "Taye and I used to be one cell, one zygote. Isn't that wild? I sometimes wonder if we knew each other before birth, if we were sisters or the same person who grew tired of herself and shed the parts she didn't want. Perhaps I am the unwanted bits, the chaff, and Taye the wheat." She is sitting cross-legged on the floor by the fridge. She doesn't see me yet, though I am just by the kitchen door. Farouk, who is her fiancé at this point, is leaning his back against the counter, his arms supporting him so that his elbows jut out behind him. He doesn't see me either. Their voices are low. I can't properly hear what they're saying, but Tai has this look on her face as if she's about to crack open and pour everywhere. She's shaking her head slowly, and Farouk is nodding. I'm curious, I feel left out, but I don't want to interrupt, so I go back up to my room. I don't understand this jealousy that has crept inside me. I'm not usually possessive. Maybe it's the heat. I married Farouk at City Hall with 5 friends as witnesses. Afterward, we went dancing at this tiny Haitian bar I love in the gay village to celebrate. I was several tequila shots and a tab of Molly Deep dancing on a mirrored floor with strobing pink lights and a bass so intense I felt my insides vibrate in time to the music. I looked up from the bottom of another shot glass, and Tai was dancing right in front of me, beckoning me to join her. She was wearing the same black halter dress as I was, had the same waist-length box braids, but I was sure it was her. Even in the dimly lit club, I could make out the scar on her chin, and the way she moved. Tai moves differently from me. She's not afraid to be seen. I walked toward her on the dance floor. I tried to take her hand, but in an instant she was gone, and I was left pawing at my reflection on a mirrored wall. It's a touching story, and anybody who's got a complicated family life probably will relate. So that's my part. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Before we go to Celine, I just wanted to say hey to the people who are watching on YouTube. It's nice to have you here. We don't have someone from the library able to monitor the chat on YouTube, but we are happy to connect with everybody. So, Celine, I'm handing it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Is it, I just wanted to clarify, did you want me or did you want Selena? Okay. Okay, cool. So hi, everyone. My name is Celine, and I'm defending the book Hench by Natalie Zena Walshots. I hope I said that right. This is an interesting book for me. I'm usually reading philosophy or ethics or conversation-based books, so nonfiction, and this is a fiction book, but it's one that I fell in love with, absolutely. So Hench is told from the perspective of Anna, who is a hench. And what henches do is that they come in for supervillains and they do all the little dirty work. So if you need someone to do your taxes or an accountant or someone to hold the door for you as you walk out of a super burglary, anything like that, those are what the henches are. You also have people called meats, and they are literally what they do. They are the meats of the really bad guys. They come in with all their big muscles and they walk in and they're just there to mess some stuff up for the supervillains if they need them to. Something really fascinating about this book, though, is that Anna wasn't initially inclined to be a hench. She kind of took it as something that could help her pay her bills. And ever since she took the first job, she has stuck with it. It pays occasionally, but it's not something that supports her until she finds a job with very, very bad but good supervillain, and from there on, that's where the story takes place. You're kind of introduced to Anna as this small, very scared and feeble human being who doesn't really know where her place is in the world. But as you go through the book, she starts to grow into herself and she starts to really believe in supervillains and why superheroes aren't really the greatest people. I'm still appalled by this book. I read it a couple of times and I'm still shocked at the way that this book takes you in and takes you through the workings of what is a supervillain, what is a superhero. And not only does it transport you within the book, but you start to recognize certain areas within day-to-day life where you're like, oh, are bad guys really that bad? Are good guys really that good? What's the real difference? Why did we choose good guys over bad guys? Why are there superheroes and why are there villains? And how does this actually work within our lives? And instead of just transporting you through this, the book transports itself into your life. And it is fascinating and driving and it's angry and it's beautiful because of that. I'm going to read an excerpt for you because I'm going to read actually like 2 mini ones because I find them fascinating and they go really well together. So this is after Anna is brutally introduced to one of the best superheroes of the town, one of the ones that is praised above all others. And his name is Super Collider because he is super strong and super buff, and all the girls and all the women in the book absolutely love him, except for Anna. And there's good reason for that. Thrown, he threw me. The hero threw me. Super Collider, he threw me across the room. I repeated it over and over, the simple fact of the cause of my injury, and it made almost everyone who heard my answer grimace and blanch and change the topic. Only one doctor pursed her lips together and nodded, as though unsurprised. She didn't look much older than I was, with luminous black skin and long, deft hands. She seemed exhausted, but projected an air of utter competence that was incredibly comforting. I should have been a doctor, I drawled. She smiled. Maybe. What you do seems dangerous. Might have a longer life expectancy than working with heroes. Wrong side, I'm afraid. She shook her head. Don't say that too loud or too often. Then Super Collider enters the picture. Of course he does. Always coming in at the wrong time. To apologize. Heroes. We'll be gentle, someone else promised. When is she being released? The third voice sounded strange, like someone was deliberately speaking a full octave above their natural register. We're not sure yet. Hopefully tomorrow. Thank you, ma'am. The door swung fully ajar and 3 cops stepped into the room, or rather, 2 cops and Super Collider. The hero was wearing reflective aviator sunglasses at night, a hastily applied fake mustache, and obviously borrowed uniform that was marked too tight. It would have been hilarious if the sight of him didn't make my body go bloody. He hung back by the door while the 2 actual officers approached my bed, a combination of solicitous expressions and threatening body language. How are you feeling, Miss Truelove? Fine. My heart was hammering against my ribcage. Part of me was terrified, certain I was about to be placed in electrified handcuffs and dragged off to some Supermax villain's prison where I'd be freeze-dried for all eternity. And that's all I'm going to say. That's where I'm going to leave you. It's a beautiful, compelling book that really makes you question good and bad guys.
Awesome. Thank you. So we will go from Celine to Selena.
Hey, all right, thank you. So everybody's made a pretty good case for their book, but I'm going to tell you this one is tonight's winner right now, just so everybody knows ahead of time. And they do actually sound like great books. I feel like I should go home and read them all, but I think everybody should read this one first and then read those other ones after. So this is Johnny Appleseed. It's written by a lovely person named Joshua Whitehead. And Johnny Appleseed is the main character. And he is a self-described indigiqueer Indian glitter princess. He is a wonderful character who knows who he is from probably the moment that he opened his eyes as a human. And he goes throughout the book. The book covers a week where he is trying to get home to support his mom because his stepdad has passed away, which is not an uncommon trope in Indigenous lives. So it's really interesting to see how he negotiates that. What he does for a living, our friend Johnny, is that he's a cyber sex worker. So that one aspect of this entire book was what completely transported me out of my everyday lifestyle and living. I seriously had to go to RuPaul's Drag Race and look up a couple of books, or not a couple of books, but a couple of words, because I had not very many ideas about what they were actually about. So for me, it really was a transportation into the life of Johnny Appleseed. And during the course of the book, you find out about his life and how he came out and how he is just so, he so knows who he is and he's so happy with who he is. And the book is full of bodies and love and about being happy within who you are. And he is just such a wonderful character. He's actually what Joshua calls a pain eater. So as a pain eater, he goes into situations that might be hard or difficult or people that are having a problem. And he regurgitates all that as love back to those people and into those situations. And Joshua has written this character with such a wonderful hand that when you're reading it, you know, he has Johnny has this wonderful sense of humor, and he's got a little bit of sarcasm that he throws in there. And as he's traveling through his week, he's trying to make money to get back home to the res. So he's, you know, working through all of that. But through that, you also find out, you know, who he is and how he came out and how all of those things happened. This is a voice that we have not heard on the literary landscape before. The queer Indigenous voice is one that we're not, I don't think, really have heard at all. And so for that reason alone, I mean, Scott has his reasons why, you know, every man should read a woman's book and every white person should read a Black person's book. But you know what? Every person in Canada should read this book because this is a voice that we've not heard before. There were so many parts I wanted to read out of this book that I really had a hard time picking this. So the main idea of the story, the main characters are really Johnny, his boyfriend, and the boyfriend's girlfriend, and that's not complicated at all. And also his mom and his kokum, his grandmother. And his kokum is my favorite character in the whole book, probably right behind Johnny. And then his mom is great too. So I just want to read the little part for you here. Like, I'm not going to give any of it away. Honestly, it's so good. Like, really, you just need to read it. But when he's come out to the first person he came out to was his grandmother, his kokum, right? And he said it was tough. And he said, I thought she would give me a licking with a wooden spoon and tell me, no, 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 no. But she just listened on the other end of the line while I cried into the receiver. All I could hear was her breathing deeply. When I eased up on the waterworks, it wasn't clear if she was still there. The line had gone silent. I wasn't sure if I was confessing to myself, or maybe even some voyeur at MTS listening in on my conversation. Had she hung up? Was this the end of my kokum and me? Graham, you still there? Mm-hmm, she replied. And as I hiccuped from all the crying, she said, you done, my boy, or what? When I caught my breath, I softly answered yes, she laughed. Heck, like I didn't even know Johnny. Why do you think I gave them earrings to you last year? Because I told you I needed them for art class? Johnny, my boy, your kokum old, but she ain't dull. You napa wapsawak, my boy, two spirit. You're still my beautiful baby grandkid, no matter what you look like or who you want to be like. And I will leave you there with that. This is such a lovely book because of how it treats family and how it treats relationships and it treats how a person who already knows and loves themselves negotiates their way through not everybody feeling like that about them. There you go.
Thank you, Selena. All right. So now we turn to Vern. I think this is going to be a tough evening here. Tough choices. Okay, Vern, please.
Thank you. I'll try to keep mine shorter than my apparent bio, which I guess I should be cutting down to size. I am here defending this book, Two Trees Make a Forest by Jessica J. Lee, which is a beautifully written, life-affirming memoir about memory, family, love, and landscapes. And we follow Jessica Lee, right over here, who is a British-Canadian Taiwanese author and environmental historian, and the winner of the 2019 RBC Taylor Emerging Writer Award, as she searches for her parents' and her grandparents' history amidst the mountains and coastlines of Taiwan, where her ancestors are from. And she not only finds her family tree, but she realizes that that family tree turns into a forest of memories, emotions, and personal discoveries. So I'm going to read a little bit from the book, which I had marked. Oh, here it is. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more after that. So this is all told basically kind of through Jessica's eyes. I was 18 when my grandfather forgot who I was. I was napping on the sofa at my grandparents' bungalow in Niagara Falls, waiting for my mother to drive us back home. I'd stayed in the bungalow 100 times before, on school holidays, at weekends, and when my parents would travel for work. Its thick orange carpeting was familiar underfoot. I knew the feel of its light switches in the darkness where the edges of the smoked glass dining table protruded and which of my childhood photographs belonged on which shelf. Mildewed stacks of Chinese newspapers dwelled in the corners, absorbing the polypropylene smell of the VHS tapes of Taiwanese soap operas that towered in the basement. I'd memorized the sounds and smells, the landscape scenes wrought in jade that my grandfather loved, and had helped care for the bonsai tree that he kept. I slept comfortably, curled into the summer stickiness of the black leather sofa until Gong, that's her grandfather, stood at my feet, pointed at me, and spoke in the only language he had left. Who is that? One of the great things about this book is that she's a polyglot, our Jessica Lee, and she puts things in these traditional Chinese lettering, and then the kind of modern translations into English, and then the English. And so there's a lot of languages that are flowing through this as well. Gong's Alzheimer had made it itself apparent to me, and I began to ask questions. The realization that the past was quickly dissolving gave an urgency to the task of knowing it. And what she discovers is after both her grandparents die, she discovers a series of letters that her grandfather has written. But because he had Alzheimer's, they're like a mystery novel. They're like in all kinds of different places in time, and they talk about his life, but she has no idea where these place names are. And so what happens is she goes back to Taiwan with her mother to basically discover her ancestors. So it not only transports us, this beautifully written book, to Taiwan, an island that I don't know very much about, but now I know a whole lot more about. And with its lush terrain and its history, which becomes a metaphor for reflection, discovery, and adventure. If you're a hiker or a wilderness person, you're going to love this book because it's really about the natural world. And two, it transports us, if you happen to be like me, the son or the child of an immigrant, as I am, it really transports you into this journey of finding your own ancestors, as well as you start to think about what you want to discover about your own parents and grandparents before they pass. And I have more to say, but once we get into the second round, I'll say it then. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Excellent. Like I said, this is going to be tough. I find the books are also different from each other, but I think we can see some common threads. So the theme this year, which is chosen by CBC Canada Reads, is one book to transport you. And this is from their site. So as we start 2021, we are reminded that books can be a safe place to go when times are tough. Whether you're reading to escape your daily cares, to explore new perspectives, or simply lift your spirits, these stories of perseverance, discovery, and resilience will transport you across Canada, around the world, and to worlds beyond. Now, many of you have touched on this already, but if you want to just quickly, my first question is, how does your book transport the reader, or how did it transport you? So who wants to go first? Susie.
I'll go. Well, for one thing, this is by nature, this is a fantasy book. And fantasy, of course, takes us far away from whatever the mundane world that we're living in right now. And of course, now in particular, we are all trapped at home. We are all stuck in the same kinds of cycles of things that we're doing. And a book like this is literally taking you not only to another world, but another time. And it's a nice familiar time. It's based obviously on a kind of Regency, maybe Victorian, maybe Edwardian, maybe these things blended together. But there's enough different about it and enough otherworldly and fantastical about it to make that seem like a new place to be. It's the kind of book that you spend a Sunday on the sofa in a blanket with a big mug of tea with the fire, and you are gone. You're just gone. You read this book in, a couple of days because it never stops taking you forward. The stakes are low. Nobody's going to die. It's really it's got the pleasure and the simplicity and the excitement of a period drama of, Downton Abbey when, what's her name's dress didn't show up or it was too big. These things are, but it's mixed with magic, and the magic gives it another worldly kind of feel to it. So it's in a kind of a familiar place, but it's different enough that the world gets built around you, and you come to understand it and feel comforted in there because it's familiar enough and yet different enough. And it just is one of those books. By nature, it's a fantasy book. It takes you away. And, the characters are familiar but different. They've got the same kind of challenges and desires that we have. So it's easy to identify with them. It is literally transporting.
Okay, excellent. Scott, do you feel ready?
I'm ready. Sure.
Okay, go.
Definitely transported, not just because the main characters are from another country, but I felt like it's funny to say because they're so from a country I've never been, off of North America. I don't have anything close to their experiences. I'm not a woman. I'm not African. However, the story made me relate to them. And if that doesn't transport you in a way that you feel for these characters in a way, it's a very spiritual book. You can't help but think, wow, that's the magic of storytelling. It takes you into people's lives, people you would never know otherwise. And for that, it's a very important book. Apart from that, the thing that transported me the most was possibly the food. I'll admit that. It's a delicious read just because there's recipes involved and you feel like, oh, well, there's got to be a way I can laminate this book because I know I'm taking it to the kitchen. But still, it gave me a better perspective on a kind of spirituality that I didn't realize, that life, though precious, it's not something to worry about. The way that the very first section of the book describes this Ogbanji Spirit coming in and going out. It's just a passage. It comes and it goes, and it's like a playful thing. You being entering because that's just what you do. You come into the world and then you're bored of it, so you go out. And it made me really think about the world around me. And I carried that thought throughout this entire book. I was transported from the very first page. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Celine.
It transports you in so many different ways. From the storytelling of the possibility of having superheroes and supervillains that are consistently intertwined with society and what that looks like, to the way that Anna evolves within her character and coming from this primarily feeble and scared human being to evolving into this supervillain of her own in some ways, and coming into her character in such a immaculate way where you start to really recognize that even within people that you know, there are always going to be moments that change you, that really affect the way that you see your outcome on life and the way that people recognize you. But it also, I think the fascinating thing about this book is that it not only transports you into it, like I said, but it also transports into your life. So you start reading this book and you get fascinated by it, and then you finish it, and then you start thinking about it, and you continuously think about it, and you start looking at it from, well, how are supervillains present in my life? Am I a supervillain? Am I like the quote unquote bad guy? Why am I a bad guy? Or why am I the good guy? Why am I the quote unquote superheroes? Because we all have superheroes within our life in their very, normative ways of what a superhero can be and what a superhero should be. But we also have the bad guys, and what actually makes a bad guy, what actually makes a good guy. And from that, you want to pick it up again, you want to read it again, because now you have all of these new thoughts, and you're like, oh wait, but there's also this that could happen, and I didn't think about it like this way. And so you pick it up again, you read it all through again, and then new things start coming up, and then you want to pick it up again and read it. So it's a fascinating read that transports you in and transports into yours.
Okay, very cool. Selena, then Vern.
Okay, so Johnny Appleseed, how did this book transform you? Well, literally, you're immersed in Johnny's life, and you begin to understand him. You begin to understand where he's coming from, also where he's going to, and how he sees himself and how he sees the world around him. And for me personally, as a woman who has always known that I'm female and has always known I'm hetero, this actually brought me into a completely different way of seeing how things are. And I had the great good fortune to speak with Joshua on Sunday and chat with him a little bit about the book. He was very gracious about the whole thing. And really, he is not Johnny Appleseed. Joshua is an academic at the University of Calgary. He's from Peguis First Nation, but Johnny, he said, is for him, it's like kind of an idea of how he could be in the world. So he said part of it is just normalizing these relationships, normalizing this in everyday life, and understanding that really it's all part of just who everybody is. So for me, it really did, honestly, because I am a certain age and don't go on, Tinder or any of those things. So RuPaul's Drag Race, if you go on, not that I'm doing a plug for them, but seriously, they have a dictionary on the webpage. So I went there because I had no idea what Grindr was. So yes, anyway, yeah, so everybody's laughing anyway, but for me, it really was a transportation for me into an entirely different way of looking at the universe and understanding it, but seeing it through Johnny's eyes and seeing it, as this is who I am. And he's like, bam, this is who I am. And I got this character and I love myself, and you're all just going to have to deal with that because I am who I am. So it really is. And it's, there is pain that's in the background, and there's trauma that's kind of in the background or on the side or, off screen kind of thing. But all of that is transformed through Johnny into just him loving himself and loving those around him. So in terms of it being the book to transport you, even though there's some of it is very, and has dark aspects to it, it really does allow you to be a part of that life, but then you can also step back into your own. So you're allowed to be in there without feeling overwhelmed by it. Like Susie was saying, her book is, it's light. It's like, nobody dies. There's no, whatever. So it's like, this is the kind of book that you can read and enjoy, but you do still think about it afterwards, because it made me think about a lot of different things that I had heard and learned as a young person about queer people, or two-spirit people, as we refer to them. And maybe rethink a lot of it, because it's a different way of looking at that way of being, right? So buy this book, read this book. It's a good book.
Okay, thanks. So Vern, your book obviously transports the reader to the other side of the world, but how else does this book how did it transport you?
Oh, well, it's transported me in all kinds of different ways, but this is literally a travel book. It's literally a book about transporting somebody, because it's a travel journal. So to some extent. So, the great thing about it is that Jessica, it's kind of divided into three strands that she weaves together so beautifully. And there's her own personal discoveries of what Taiwan is, and going down the coastlines and into the mountains, and then there's the story that she's unearthing the world of her grandparents. And then there's her personal reflections on that. And so that all draws you in until this final scene where she's on this mountaintop, she's gone hiking the mountaintop, and everything becomes clear to her in a way that we didn't expect. And so it really brings us into that world and into cartography and the history of Taiwan and all that stuff. So it transported me to this place that I've heard a lot about, but didn't know very much about. And it also transports you because it discusses language and how we communicate with each other through the different languages that we know. So yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, I think when you're, particularly if you happen to be the child of anybody who's immigrated to Canada, this book, and the parents immigrated, the grandparents immigrated to Canada like when they were in their 50s. So they didn't come as young people. And so it's really interesting. It transported me back to thinking about my parents coming to Canada and about my grandparents and my ancestors, and started to actively made me kind of start to look back at my own personal and family history in a way. And so that's why it's transportational. It's transportingness.
Okay, thank you. I know I sent you guys questions ahead of time. I will ask one that I sent, but now I've thought of different ones. Sorry, so I'm going to put you on the spot. But this is for Celine and Susie. So I went and looked back to through all the Canada Reads final 5 books since 2002. There have been 6 speculative fiction titles. And if you're watching and you're not sure what speculative fiction is, it's fantasy, it's science fiction, it's dystopian. So 6 titles since 2002. 3 of those were Margaret Atwood books. So, should we be seeing more speculative fiction in, like, when we're talking about Canadian literature, CanLit? Why should we see more speculative fiction? So I'm not sure who wants to take that first, but yeah. And, I'm interested to hear your point of view. And also, like, Susie, I mean, you write horror, can be,
You didn't even say horror. You didn't even list horror. I don't know if you saw me push.
I just said horror.
When you listed spec, you didn't even cover horror. And yet I'll tell you, horror is the one, it's the one genre that always makes money. So there you go, horror and porn, apparently. So, so here's the thing. Spec fiction, horror fiction, science fiction, fantasy, it's considered to be very light reading. And sometimes it is. Sometimes it is absolutely just entertainment. But more often than not, the writer of spec fiction is a writer like any other writer and is imbuing all of their work with other meaning. Most times, monsters represent something in the book. And it's not always as obvious. Like, Jonathan Franzen, I know he's not, Mr. Popular right now, but let's take his book Freedom, right? The birds and the birds were representing freedom, and all the people in the book, had forgotten how to fly. And, and this is a metaphor that's going to win him National Book Award nominations. But, Stephen King's book, The Shining, for instance, probably his biggest book, the monsters, the ghosts all represent addiction, which is something probably more people can relate to than the upper middle class suburban white guy that is in Freedom, and so what makes Freedom a more valuable book than The Shining? And yet it took 25 years, 30 years for Stephen King to be nominated and win a National Book Award. So yes, as a writer of horror fiction, through which I tell all kinds of stories. For instance, my last novel was called The 13. It's about a group of suburban witches. They live in the suburbs. I was at the time living in the suburbs. They're struggling to make these, they're not struggling because they're witches, but they are, they became witches to make the lives of their families better. It just got a little out of hand. But their original, you know, it's representative of social climbing, of economic climbing, of, you know, putting everything aside to take care of your family. That's what my book is about. My middle book, or whatever you call it, third book, The Dwelling, is, you know, it's a haunted house story, but it's absolutely haunted by my divorce. It's all about my divorce. Everybody should go get that book because I wrote some really awful stuff about my divorce. It's really good. Okay, so yes, so there absolutely should be more spec fiction. I can't remember if Bunny, Mona Awad, was it a nominee a couple of years ago? I feel like it was. If it wasn't, it should have been. That is a fantastic book. Highly recommend it. Besides this one, of course, being very fantastic. But, you know, again, it's spec fiction. It's winning a lot of awards. It's literary spec fiction. And if it didn't make it in, it should have. Okay, I'm going to, you know, roll my sleeves back down now. I think you can. We're fine. We're fine.
So Celine, you know, you were saying you don't, you know, you read more philosophy, you've been reading nonfiction. So what are your feelings now about speculative fiction, you know, kind of a bit of sci-fi?
Yeah, I think I've always deep down been a fan of sci-fi. I used to work in a bookstore. I was the queen of the sci-fi section. And the horror section, actually. Loved horror, working in that area. So I've always had like a soft spot for fiction. I've just never been able to find really amazing books that I could really get into. And that's kind of why I stuck with philosophy and ethics and community talks like that. But I think that it's such an amazing category of books. Like not only does it encompass a multitude of different areas and you can really find something for everyone within spec fiction, but at the same time, like I think that people don't recognize that within spec fiction and within nonfiction, like I don't want to say they're the same thing because they're not, but they come on the same line. Like within nonfiction, you really like you're told exactly how it is. You know exactly what that person is going through. It's their life, it's their opinions, it's all that kind of stuff. And within spec fiction, you're still getting that same thing. At the same time, you're getting it to the point where you start realizing there are certain things in your life that apply. And I think that's something that scares people a little bit because they're like, whoa, this person like understands me on a deeper level, or this book understands me on a deeper level, because they start relating the experiences that they've had to the book, and they start recognizing areas that they've maybe not accomplished so well in their life in the book. And that scares people. It's taking people out of their comfort zone, right? But it's a necessary process because we're human and I almost knocked my tea off my desk. Ooh, getting too excited. We're human, right? And we learn and we grow. And I think spec fiction is honestly a space where people actually learn about themselves and actually grow into themselves because they're able to take their experiences and they're able to place it in the book and look at it from a new perspective, from either the main character's eyes or some of the other characters present within the book. And I think that's something that's really, really important. And one of the reasons why we need to have more spec fiction within Canada Reads and within all other competitions as well.
Okay, fantastic. Selena, I'm not going to forget about you, but first I want to pose something to Scott and Vern. These books, your two books, you know, Vernson's nonfiction and Scott's is fiction, but they feel very similar. They're taking place in multiple, like in different countries, you know, like the characters are traveling. There's issues with family, you know, discovering more about family. What makes your book more of a winner than your book? What's the difference? Because I see a lot of similarity. So I'm stepping back and letting you kind of How are these, how are these so different? Because they seem really similar.
Michelle,
for it, Scott.
we should be arm wrestling at this point. I can't say much about why my book is better than Vern's, because I haven't read your book yet, but I am tempted. The great thing about books about family is that everybody, I'm sure, has some family issue. Everybody has a complication in their family life at some point. So it's really reassuring to know that you're not alone, that there are other people out in the world who can't talk to their parents, or their children never call, or why does my sibling never phone me back? Why do they get my messages? I know they do. It's a wonderful sense of calmness that comes from reading about these stories, that okay, families are tough, the world is tough, things happen, you are tied by blood to these people, so there will always be that pull, but that pull isn't always pulled back, and sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't, and generally it all works out in the end. But it's great to read these things. It does help. It's therapeutic in a way. Off to you, Vern.
Yeah, I want to address Sherry Lee's comments on here, because I think that what this book does is actually it's not about dysfunctionality or on the edges of Canadian society. It's pretty common for us just to in youth to forget about who our ancestors are, or who our grandparents are. And I just wanted to kind of prove the point of this book, or to kind of give you a better feel for how it deals with family. I just want to read a short excerpt because I think it's really great. I knew that my grandparents had been born in China, but considered Taiwan home. I had a vague sense of why, though I'd visited the island only as an infant. I'd heard occasional mention of past wars and government leaders or jet fighters and the ills of communism, but that history was taught not in Canadian schools. Like a lot of things aren't taught in Canadian schools. When people heard my family was from Taiwan, they would often reply, "Thailand, I love Thai food." I learned to correct them tactfully and smiling, never wanting to make my frustrations known, but I realized too how little I knew myself. And so I love this book because it's very, very heartwarming. And that's not to say that it's glib or that it's simple or that, her grandparents didn't have problems or her family doesn't have problems. Every family has problems, but it's really a unique way of discovering your family history. And I think it kind of provides a path for anybody who's looking to connect to their family. This is kind of like a beautiful shining lighthouse as to how to do that. So that's why I love this book and why I love the family nature of it. Back to you, Michelle.
Okay. All right. Selena, I actually, when I read Johnny Appleseed, I almost felt like Johnny was a fantasy character, like his home life felt familiar, felt familiar. It was a story I had heard before. There's, the relationships, but he just seems larger than life. Is Johnny larger than life? Is he a fantasy character, or is he someone we really could know?
Oh, okay. Those are all good questions. So number one, I'm going to say, yes, we should have more speculative fiction, even though I wasn't supposed to answer that question. And in a way, it is speculative fiction. It's fiction, right? So the last couple of times that I've been on here, I have defended books that have been very gritty, very dark, people's personal stories that they're writing from their hearts, right? This is just good, light fun, right? It's about a guy who loves himself and loves the world around him and loves it in a very physical way. And like for anybody, you can find a space in here to understand what's going on. I think that really the whole idea of Johnny is that he really is like this indigiqueer Indian princess who's gonna like splatter the glitter as he comes in the door, and everybody's just gonna fall dead, be slain by his lovely good looks. Honestly, like he really is. He talks about getting his makeup on and strutting into the pub and stuff like that. Strutting into the club rather, and just really, he is in a way larger than life. And he's not larger than life in terms of like his body size. Apparently he's described as having a very slight body, a very slim person, and not a big person. But his personality comes out in such a beautiful way through Joshua's writing. And Joshua writes with such a lovely light hand. His first two books are both books of poetry, Full Metal Indigiqueer. It was his first book of poetry. I love the name. I love the idea of the whole thing. For me, I wrote up a little piece for the Gazette. Actually, when I was asked to write my piece about this, I said that I like to challenge myself. What was challenging about this book was not the way that not that it was a difficult read. The words were not difficult, and the topic was not difficult. But for me, it was just so completely outside of who I am and how I see the world. That for me, it was a way of looking through someone else's eyes and seeing it that way. So I don't know if that really answers the question, but
Yes.
read the book.
Okay. So, the idea of this year is something to transport you, escape your daily cares. So do you have a type of book or a specific book that's your kind of safe place read, that when you're like, we've all had an interesting year. I hear still from a lot of people that they haven't actually been able to read because it's hard to concentrate and all that. So what's your comfort read? What can you turn to when you need to? Vern.
Well, I've done more reading this year than I think I have ever. And so maybe I'm lucky that way. And I'm a big nonfiction reader, but I've been able to delve into some fiction as well. And I'm really lucky because as a playwright, I get to read a lot of plays, which are really fast. And of course, I encourage everybody to read plays. But I also happen to be adapting a lot of Canadian work to the stage. And so this year, I've been working on this adaptation for the Manitoba Theatre Centre in Winnipeg on The Diviners by Margaret Lawrence. And so the fact, Celine's like, and so, I've been having this awesome opportunity to work with the Métis community in Winnipeg in developing a stage adaptation of this. And so I get to read this book 3 or 4 or 5 times as I'm working on it. And so this is the book that I've kind of put out there as being not only a Canadian classic, but actually kind of a forgotten masterpiece. And one of the very first books, perhaps by a white Canadian writer, that started to talk about the possibilities from the white perspective of reconciliation. So I really highly recommend that if you haven't read The Diviners, you should read this book. It's fantastic. And go see the play in Winnipeg in about 2 years when we can go back to the theater.
Okay, thank you. Scott, your mic's off. Do you want to go next?
Is my mic off?
If you're not ready, Celine put up
on?
her hand.
I can talk. Can you hear me?
Okay, then it'll be Celine after you. Go, Scott.
Okay. You can hear me? Good. I'm a tough reader. I have to admit, it takes me a long time to get through books. So I don't have one book that I find to be especially comforting, except for the dictionary, which I refer to a lot, I have to tell you. However, through the course of my work, I get a lot of books across my desk, and I get to read through a lot of those. But my recreational reading, so to speak, is very slim. However, there was one book that I picked up recently that I really appreciated. It was especially short. It was a John Cleese book that I got from the library. It's called, what is it called? It's called Creativity, A Short and Cheerful Guide. And he's a marvelous writer, very humorous, of course, very succinct. And any of my creative friends, I would highly encourage pick this book up. It doesn't take you any time at all. It's very reassuring in that I tend to think of it as don't worry, be creative. That's kind of the theme of the book. The creativity will just flow out of you, and your mind will just take care of the details. That was my favorite read over the last few months.
Thank you. Celine.
Before I start, I can't agree more with Vern. Go read plays. I love plays. I was in theater for 3 years. Go read plays. It's the best thing that you'll ever do for yourself. Also loved that book a lot. But over the past couple months, I think I've definitely struggled a lot with reading and just finding something that I felt in tune to. And I think that also came with mental health and how I kind of approached my mental health. However, I did find a really amazing book that I absolutely fell in love with. And it's a book that I continuously go back to, whether it be for just light reading or if I want some tips on mental health or anything like that. And that's The Higher Etiquette by Lizzie Post, who is the great-granddaughter, if I'm not mistaken, of Emily Post. So all of those like etiquette styled books, really great. This is also a play on words because it is based around cannabis. And so it talks about different mental health stuff within cannabis. It talks about just a whole bunch of different stuff. It's really, really great. I absolutely love it. And it's something that I've been going back to again and again. And it's just like a very, I don't know, it's a safe space. It's a comforting space. I really enjoy it.
Okay, thank you. I'm making a list of books to read. Susie and Selena, who wants to go? Whoever unmutes gets to go first.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Well, mine is weird, so nobody judge me. But I'm a total, I'm a bit of a Tudor history nerd. And so my comfort zone is always something from the Tudor history line of books. There's so many. You know, there's the Wives of Henry VIII, there's Henry VIII, there's a bunch of other people. I love those. The other thing that I turn to again and again, and I am an absolute, not kidding, expert, is on the dynamic duo of Bonnie and Clyde. And so I've read everything, and I am actually one of those people that has a secret life where I go online and I talk about Bonnie and Clyde to other nerds. And nobody would ever want to have us at a party according to what we're putting online, but we're actually all lovely people. But yes, so that's my, especially if I'm writing something, if I'm writing fiction, I need to read nonfiction. And so the nonfiction I tend to turn to are things that I can read, I'll enjoy very, very much, but won't steal too much of my mental energy from the work that I'm doing. And so I stick to, I deviated briefly to Marie Antoinette, and that was fun, but I came home and I haven't cheated on the Tudors since. And I do love any Bonnie and Clyde. That said, I'm rereading House of Mirth right now for the, I'd say 6th time. So I finished this book that will win tonight. I finished it and I started reading House of Myth. Take it away, Selena.
Yes, Selena.
Okay, so I love to read. I have been reading, and I've not ever stopped since I could read. And my real go-to is about is any kind of speculative fiction, but particularly like fantasy or anything that's a historical book, a historical novel that will take you to the place that you're reading about. So right now I'm rereading the series that Pauline Gedge, who's an Alberta author, wrote about the Hippopotamus Marsh, which is about Egypt. And she brings Egypt alive. I remember being a teenager, a very young teenager, and reading her book, Child of the Morning, which is about Queen Hatshepsut. And that just opened my brain to the whole idea of, you know, because I grew up with, my mom was this huge feminist and everything, with the idea of this woman of power and her just taking the reins of government into her hands, and all within this completely unique society that I had no idea really how Egypt had existed and that kind of thing. So any kind of books like that, anything that really does, like this is a perfect topic for me this year, is the book to transport you, because I love any kind of book that will take me away from this. So actually COVID has been the year of read everything that's already on my shelf. Plus now I can actually, now through my library, I can get ebooks and I can read them on my tablet. And oh my God, I don't have to go out of the house now. I can just stay home and read all these books. It's so fantastic. Yeah, so you know what, people, it's for me, it's anything that literally takes me away from whatever I'm doing. And those are the kinds of books that I love to read. But right now it's Pauline Gedge for me. This month is Pauline Gedge month.
Yeah, and I find when I can't concentrate on something, I will always be able to pick up a really well-written supernatural or horror novel. And the other Michelle, there's two Michelles here. We also are like true crime fanatics. So that's, you know, it's strange to go to something kind of scary to comfort you, but there's something about it that just, you know, gives you something to think about. There was a question in the chat. Someone wanted to know Susie's thoughts on the Black adaptation film of Bonnie and Clyde called Queen and Slim.
I loved it very much. In fact, I was very excited when it was coming out because I absolutely saw those comparisons before people were actually even making them. Now, that said, Queen and Slim are much more sympathetic characters than Bonnie and Clyde were. Bonnie and Clyde were, you know, they were cheap punk murderers. They were victims in a sense. Certainly she was the smarter of the two. And you know what? This is a really bad idea to get me talking about this. Yes, I loved Queen and Slim. I loved it. It was super good, and I highly recommend everyone seeing that. And yes, and it is, but they're nicer people.
Vern and Susie, do you guys end up having very loud conversations about books? Like, do you get intense with each other?
We read very different books. And, you know, he's much smarter than I am. And so he reads much harder books than me. So, it's very
Susie reads longer books than me.
And more of them.
I just, you know, happy wife, happy life. So you just learn to read your stuff and to make sure that you're not the first person to turn out the light at the end.
Vern keeps hogging the Kindle. I've got like 9 new books on there. That's how long he's been hogging the Kindle.
Okay, I think I'm gonna skip this last question. Jeff's been nicely sitting back here. Do you have a question as you've been listening to all of this?
No, I just love it. I don't think I got any questions. I've been sitting here. I should go in the read. Hi, everyone. I don't know if I have any questions. Hi. I just, I don't know. I love being part of this crowd. And I think I'm pretty excited to get on to voting because, yeah, I want to see what's going on there. But
We're going to get one last
yeah,
chapter.
you've been also great. And I think what I see in the chat is like so many people are getting ideas for books, and like we all want to go home and read now. So yeah, that's what I want to do with my Friday when I get home. I want to go home and read. So thank you.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is go to the final question, which is why should your book win? Why is your book the one book to transport us and that we all should win? And then CBC actually made trailers for the books. They posted them 5 hours ago. So they're just 1 minute long. So I thought after we do the whole round, maybe we'll just watch the trailers to kind of get, kind of put things in people's head. And then we're going to vote. For those of you watching, I'm going to post a poll. And so you just vote like right on the screen here. So I'm going to do reverse order and start with Vern. Why should your book win?
One word. Hope. It's a book about hope. The fact is that even after we die, our stories live on. And so if you have raised your children well, they will, even after you die, go and dig around in your garage and find your poem. I found this poem that I wrote today in the garage when I was like 19 years old, and go, hey, my ancestor did that. So it's about hope and about your ancestors. That's why. So 2 trees make a forest.
Okay, excellent. All right, Selena.
I think that this book is the book that should win because it is a voice we've not heard. It's a voice we need to hear in the Canadian landscape and appreciate. And because Joshua is a wonderful person and he deserves this. Look at these, but he deserves Canada Reads. So go for it, guys. Vote for this book.
Okay, Celine.
Because it's a book that is going to not only make you question everything that you do within your life, but it's also a book that you are going to want to come back to again and again and again and reread and dissect and annotate and everything. And because she just looks like a cool person, that's why you should vote. This hench, okay? Hench. The bad guys aren't always bad guys. Superheroes aren't always good.
Okay, Scott.
Am I muted still? Can you hear me? Okay, good. Francesca Equiazzi's book, Butter, Honey, Pig Bread. It's a book about families. That's why it has to win, because everybody comes from a family, so relatively is as relevant as your mom and dad. If this book doesn't make you want to finish the book and call someone that you're related to, then you're not reading it right. This is a book that makes you remember and realize that blood ties are the strongest bonds, even when you're separated by continents and circumstances beyond your control. And it will touch you, just like it touched me.
Okay, excellent. Okay, Susie, last but not least.
Here you are, The Midnight Bargain by C.L. Polk, who I will remind everyone is an Albertan. Here's why you should vote for this book. This book is approximately 140,000 words long. You know what none of those words are? None of those words are COVID, pandemic, Jason Kenney, Meghan Markle, guns, pipeline, economy, CERB. None of those words are those. So please vote for something that makes you feel good on a Sunday.
Okay, awesome. I am going to try and show these trailers. And while I do, if anyone in the audience has a specific question for one or more of our panelists, put it in the chat. And then we'll deal with those questions and then we'll vote. So here we go. Let's see if I can do this tech properly. There we go.
Beatrice Claiborne lives in a land of magic and mystery, but also a land of rigid social rules and expectations. As a woman, she must marry well to help her family, but that's not what she wants. She wants to practice magic, which is illegal and dangerous for married women to do. Beatrice will do anything to make her dream come true, including hunting down a special book to help her, working with her rival, making a deal with a spirit, and possibly giving up true love. Forever.
Jessica J. Lee grew up in Canada, but her grandparents were from Taiwan. It was a world and a family forgotten, or so Jessica thought. But after her Paul and Gong pass away, Jessica's mother finds a letter written by Gong about his life before. Jessica goes to Taiwan to be in nature, to hike and swim and travel. To learn about Taiwan, its land and history, to unearth memories and make new ones, a place new and old, while discovering a country familiar yet foreign, a place that was home.
Johnny Appleseed is an Indian glitter princess. That's what he calls himself. He left the res and is now living in the city. He pays his bills with sex work. Things are tough, but Johnny's tougher. His community in the city is small but tight-knit. But when his stepfather dies, it's time to return to the res. Face his memories, his history, his mother. Because looking back is the only way forward. And love is what he needs most. It's there, if he opens himself up to it.
Anna is a hench. She crunches data for supervillains. It's just office work, a way to pay the bills. But when she gets injured on the job, because of the biggest superhero in town, she gets mad. How many other people have been hurt by superheroes? How many jobs lost? Homes destroyed? Lives ruined? Anna decides to find out and discovers that superheroes aren't so super after all. She becomes a hench on the rise, working for the baddest villain of all. How far can she climb? How far will she fall?
Three Nigerian women, a mother, Kambirinachi, and her twin daughters, Kehinde and Taye. Kambirinachi was born an Ogbanji, a spirit, a soul who causes misfortune and misery to all she loves. Kehinde and Taye are sisters connected by fate, separated by trauma, driven apart, cast to different corners of the world. But an appetite for food, a sprinkling of faith, and an abundance of love sets the table for togetherness, healing, and forgiveness.
Hey. I don't think we have any more questions, do we?
No, there's one.
Okay, I think we're just gonna go straight to voting. I will not vote, but the panelists can vote. And attendees, please vote. So I'm gonna launch this. Oops, hang on a second. Hang on, I forgot to say that panelists could vote. Sorry, I didn't click. You guys can't vote. But attendees.
I was voting for Johnny Appleseed.
All right, well, let's give this, okay. This is, oh my goodness. I knew this was going to be, a tough race here. Okay, I think if there's 6 more people who can vote. Oh my gosh. Honestly, I think this has been our tightest Canada Reads race. So I'll give it another, there's 5 more people who can vote.
Those might be us. Those 5 people.
No, you guys are separate from the attendees. I'll give it another minute.
Oh, 5 people who were voting for Midnight Bargain, you should hurry.
Yeah.
Those
2 of us
five-
here.
those
Can you
five-
vote twice?
those 5
Yes, you
Native
can vote.
people that are working on Indian time, get on there and vote for this.
Vote twice for my book.
I think, you know what, that second person might be the tiebreaker. I don't know what Jeff's going out to.
Honestly, we should have like a drum roll going here, guys. Like,
I know.
this is so tense.
Okay, you know what? That second person, put your vote in the chat because I'm not sure. I don't think I can do. I don't think I can. We need a tiebreaker. So the house that has. Usually I do have a crown, but since we're not in person, there is a crown. 2 trees. That makes 8. So that's a 3-way tie. Now we need a tiebreaker. No.
Can we know who it's between?
Okay.
Yeah, how do we see?
It's all very close. So right now we have 18% for butter honey pig bread, 24% for hench and Johnny Appleseed. And since someone else voted for 2 trees makes a forest, that is also 24%. And Midnight Bargain is 12.
I'm in last place. Oh,
but still pretty respectable. But you know what? I think it's going to, since we've got a Johnny Appleseed in, do a poll with the top 3. Okay, that's a good idea. Okay, I'm going to do a poll with the top 3 now. Okay.
You can also share the poll results, which
yeah.
mean best.
Let me just go share the results.
Thank you.
There we go.
Wow.
Okay, I mean, we could, so there should be one more here for 2 trees make a forest. There's one. Okay, I'm going to do the top 3. And then we'll see what happens. All right, let's turn this. Stop sharing results. I'm going to do a different poll if it'll let me. Okay, here, edit. Okay. The poll has ended. It's going to let me make a new one. Oh, technology. Should just let me make a new one. Hang on one sec. Okay.
Let us vote to break the tie.
Okay, I'm going to allow you guys to vote. I'm going to clear this, and it is in between 3 titles. Hench, Johnny Appleseed, and Two Trees Make a Forest. Okay, so all right, I'm seeing the numbers going up and down and up and down and up and down. And panelists can vote too this time. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I put it so they could vote. Oh. They can,
We can't see the poll anymore, though.
you can't see the vote? Okay. All right. Are you good? Jeff, Jeff's just talking to me from the other side of the room. I think I'm giving it another like 15 seconds, and then I'm going to call it.
One Mississippi, two Mississippi.
So I would just want to throw a plug in there. Like if anybody doesn't feel like they can read, seriously, go back to the other years and look at the books that have been on the short list for Canada Reads and read any of them. Literally read any of them because they are amazing. They are all authors that deserve to win. Like all 5 of these books deserve to win. They really do.
I agree. As do any other book that you pick up in any bookstore or online. Every book deserves a glance. There's so much stuff out there to read right now.
Plays are easy to read. They're cheap and fast.
Read the newspaper.
I'd rather see
horror. You should read horror, just horror.
So those households that have more than one person, put your second person's vote in the chat, because again, we need a tiebreaker.
Oh no.
Oh no, this is starting to look like a US election now.
Ah.
We're gonna dispute
Want to recount?
I think that two panelists in the same household, that's got to be some kind of, figuring of the ethical system, right?
Well, I heard that Vern
Scrappy
was
can't
very,
vote
very
because-
firm about keeping it separate, so.
Our dog can't read because he's blind.
Okay. We got one more for Hench, and we've got
one more for
Johnny Appleseed. So I'm going to call it Johnny Appleseed by one vote. One vote.
Wow.
So that is the closest we have ever had. Amazing. So our winner for the winning book, Jeff, tell me again who won the draw. Rod Matthews, you are the winner of a copy of Johnny Appleseed. So it will be waiting for you at the library. We open on Monday, so to the public. And this was fantastic. And I have to say, this was tough for me too. And if I had to vote, I know when I finished reading Johnny Appleseed, I held it to my chest when I was done. Scott, very much even that first scene where she's making that caramel cake, the language was so beautiful. I love fantasy. I love the mix of just being out in nature and then mixed in with, discovering your family. But I would buy Hench. It is the one, it's the one book I've been just everyone must read Hench. Everyone must read Hench, except my mom. She's like, oh, maybe I should read this. I'm like, you're not going to like it. It's got super villains and superheroes, but so tough. So anyways, congrats. CBC's Canada Reads, which is not as good as ours because sometimes they're a little bit mean. That starts on Monday. Yeah, last year was, it does start on Monday. So it'll be interesting to see how they vote. But I think St. Albert always votes always votes the best way. So thank you, everybody. So if you fill in your evaluation form, there will be a draw for a copy of the other books. And any last goodbyes or words or anything? You guys did an amazing job.
It was fun. It was great meeting all the fellow panelists.
Yes, it was. It was
See you
great
again,
to
Vern.
meet you guys.
It
I
was
hope
great
we
to meet
all run into
everybody.
each other
Take
sometime.
care. I hope we see each other in public soon.
In real life, I hope so. But honestly, like, you guys all made me want to go and read these other books now, which I hadn't done
Me
yet.
too.
So,
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
and seriously, I thought Midnight Bargain was going to win. Just so you know.
Thank you.
It was tough. It was tough.
You know
So
what?
no, they're all really good. And usually I don't manage to get to read. I read maybe one of the Canada Reads books. Yeah, I encourage everybody, just read them all. They were crazy good. So
I just wanted to say, as the writer in residence at the Metro, like I put my email in the chat. You know, come and contact me if you're a writer out there who wants to chat. Both Nisha Patel and I are writers in residence this year, and we're happy to talk to anybody who's written anything. So we're there as a service to you. So please come and visit us.
okay, and yeah, as far as attendees, I think we had like 40 or so here, and then we're also streaming it on YouTube. So yeah, we got a lot out there. So
Nice crowd.
Thanks,
good
everybody,
night,
for coming.
everybody. Good night. Thank you, and good night.
Good night. Thanks for having me.
I'm gonna save the
And congratulations, Selena.